So welcome to section 21, and in this section we're going to take a look at paging, sorting and filtering. And if we take a look at the learning goals for this section, then first of all we're going to set up paging on the API and client. Currently we're sending down all the activities every time somebody loads up our dashboard. That is not the most optimal way of doing things, especially not if your website becomes super successful and you've got a million objects that are stored in your database. Do you really want to send back a million objects? I mean, the client could click on your dashboard, think, nah, and go somewhere else, and you've just sent them a million records, and that can be avoided simply by using paging. Also, we need to add sorting and use sorting on the API and the client as well to get our data into the order that we want it in. And we're also going to take a look at filtering. We've got a filtering widget on the right hand side of our dashboard that doesn't do anything. Now, all of these methods take place or can take place inside what's referred to as an iQueryable of type T. And this is where we're going to store our queries until we're ready to execute them. And just a bit more about the iQueryable before we begin. Now, this contains a query variable that stores query commands. Query commands can be things like order by, where, etc. So before we execute our SQL query, then we're going to build up an expression tree basically using the iQueryable of type T. Obviously the type there is going to be replaced for, let's say, an activity or a user or something. But we're going to create an expression tree and then execution is deferred until iteration. Now we only execute the query that's inside the queryable on one of these occasions. If we execute a for each loop and it needs to iterate over each thing inside the list, then it has to execute the queryable. Also, if we put the list out to a list or to an array or to a dictionary, again, that then executes whatever's inside our queryable. And also singleton queries will cause the query to be executed against our database. If we want to get a count of the activities or the average, things like that will also execute our query. But the goal of this and pagination and filtering and sorting is to defer execution. We don't want to make a query to our database until we've built up the full expression tree that we want to send, and then it goes to our database as a single query. So just as a way of an example, what we would do in this example is we create a queryable variable, and then we go and get our activities where, for example, the date is greater than a start date. And then we can order them by the date, and then we can store this as a queryable. So our queryable is going to be a type of queryable. And then when we're ready, we can go and execute this request, but we can also add additional expressions into our expression tree. So in this case, we say await queryable, and then we skip how many records do we want to skip. We can pass that an offset, and how many do we want to take. And these are the pagination operations that we'd use. And still, nothing goes to the database. It's only when we execute the toList async is this expression tree sent to our database as a query, and then it's going to return the results. So the idea of this is simply deferring the execution of our query. So let's take a look at the before and after for this section. And before, well, there is no before. We're not paging anything. We can see all of our activities every time we come to our dashboard page. And our filters don't do a great deal. Our calendar kind of does something, but nothing actually happens when we click on these dates. So we're going to rectify that, and after, then we're going to have our activity filters up and running, and I'm going to be able to click between these different filters and view the different types of events I'm interested in, whether I'm hosting, whether I'm going, all the activities, and we've also got a date filter so we can select a starting point of where we want our activities to start from. Also notice the placeholders we're using there instead of a full page loading experience, which is not particularly great from a user interface perspective, and the placeholders make it look a lot more responsive. Also inside a user's profile, then in their events tab we'll be able to see events specific to them that they're going to either their future events, their past events if they have any, or events that they themselves are hosting. So that's the goal for this section, and let's begin.